everything. And the reality is that this is a situation that could present for people as trauma. And so our goal as parents right now is to help our kids make meaning out of all of this so that it doesn't become perceived that way. Stepping back and thinking about how do we want our kids to think about this 20 years from now, when they're asked, because they will be in high school and college and post-college, when they have kids of their own, what was it like in 2020 when you were quarantined for however long? What do we want them, how do we want them to answer that question? What do we want them to say? And that's sort of our starting point for how we want to be parenting them right now. We need to be authentic. We need to be honest with them. And we also need to try and figure out what it is that they need and they're asking for and how to get that to them as best we can. But really the word of the day is survival. At the end of the day, we need to make it through the day. We want to hope that our kids are happy, that they're healthy, and that they're safe. If they didn't get any work done, they didn't get any work done. But if they're happy, healthy, and safe, we've done our job in this world of pandemic parenting. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the social media image of parenting right now, and this idea that as parents, we should pick up a hobby and we should teach our kids something new. And I know initially my Facebook feed was full of these beautiful color-coded COVID-19 daily schedules that made me so anxious. This was sort of the picture that was in my head of how this was supposed to look, and if I wasn't meeting this expectation, I clearly was doing something wrong. These are my children. I have two boys who are 10 and 7 in the 5th grade and the 2nd grade. And these 4 pictures are moments in time. And please know they are moments in time. When I was putting this slide together, I found these 4 great shots and I thought, awesome, this is what it should look like, right? And then I laughed and I put this one together because this is what it actually looks like. Again, these are pictures from my own home. We have a board in the kitchen that tells us what day it is because we can't keep track. My 7-year-old in the bottom corner there is rolling on the floor because he didn't want to do probably some sort of reading assignment. The chores are never done. Some days we have to call it a day and sit on the couch and watch movies. And our social interaction involves, I am not sure if you can see it well, but there's a cell phone propped up on a water bottle pointed at the TV where a friend of one of my sons was watching us play video games. This is what life looks like in my house right now. And I think from talking with a lot of people, this is what life looks like in a lot of homes right now. It is not super smooth and super calm and quiet and academic and rigid. It's flexible, it's fluid, and everyone is just doing the best that they can to make it through the day happy, healthy, and safe. We've got all these different puzzle pieces that we're dealing with. A lot of these things we were doing before anyway, but we had a few hours of quiet during the day, or at least less children at home during the day to get some of these things done. Now we've added remote learning into the mix of all of this. And all of these puzzle pieces just don't connect well, cleanly, easily, swiftly. They stick. They don't always connect. Sometimes you really want them to connect and you can't force them to be there, right? So when we have a set of puzzle pieces like this that doesn't fit, I mean, if you think about, many of us have done some puzzles over the last 8 weeks, and when you can't find that last piece, and you know it's something, but you just can't find it anywhere, or you've got a pile of pieces in the middle and you're looking for something specific and you just can't find it, that frustration level just starts to rise. And this is for us as adults. When our frustration levels rise, our kids' frustration levels rise. And just like us, our kids don't always have the words to explain what's going on for them. particularly I saw a lot of 8-year-olds. My son, like I said, is 7 and kind of is almost 8, so sort of falls into that category. Where developmentally, these kids have a lot of big ideas in their heads, a lot of big feelings, a lot of big emotions, and not a lot of words to articulate what's actually going on. So what happens is, instead of telling us, they show us. And these are some of the things that we see. A lot of tantrums, a lot of meltdowns, refusal. I even in my 7-year-old, I'm seeing a lot of some regression in different areas. Behaviors that you thought you had a handle on, suddenly coming back in full force. And why is that? Well, because if our baseline is high, our resources are low, our tolerance is low, it takes less to set us off and to step us backwards as adults and as kids. And particularly as kids. As adults, we have a functioning frontal lobe. For our kids, their frontal lobe is not yet developed. So the problem becomes that as they're having these big feelings and these big thoughts and these big emotions, their emotions take over and start driving the bus. And when our emotions are driving the bus, we can't solve problems. We behave. And so that's a big piece of what's happening right now and why we may be seeing so many more difficult behaviors in some of our kids. The thing about our kids' behaviors is that they're the observable piece of a larger communication pattern. When we notice observable behaviors in our kids, there's a couple of questions we have to ask ourselves, right? So first of all, we need to remember that we are in a situation that is very stressful and could potentially be traumatic for some people. So our kids may be in fight or flight, which is really where our primal brain takes over and we are truly in a place of survival. Our kids feel that there's a threat to their life and they can either fight it or they can run away from it. There's a third option, which is to freeze and kind of do nothing, which we tend to see a little bit more in older kids. Younger kids tend to be more classically fight or flight, just because of where their brain is in development. We need to figure out if that's happening. And we also need to figure out what emotion is actually happening underneath this behavior and in light of this fight or flight response. Stepping back beyond that, what triggered this fight or flight reaction? Because again, our baseline is high, so we're triggered more easily. Figuring out what it was that started the behavior or the issue or the incident can help us figure out all the other pieces. What the underlying emotion is, and then what the thoughts are that are creating the continued response. Because a lot of times right now, particularly with these tantrum type behaviors, it's just ongoing. Our kids are having a hard time regulating and taking that breath and stepping back and being able to really get back in control. And with all of this, the ultimate underlying question is, what does my kid need right now? What is it that this behavior is trying to tell me that he or she needs in this moment? Now, this is a lot of work to do on any given day, and especially for those of you with multiple kids, if different kids are coming at you with different things, this is a lot of work to do. So it's the kind of thing that tends to happen afterwards, or things are kind of calm and you start thinking about how the week has been and maybe why did this situation happen or why did that situation happen. You start to put these pieces together. Again, more puzzle pieces. It's another set of puzzle pieces. And we start to try and figure out, what is this behavior trying to tell me right now? These are essentially the 4 things that typically our kids' behavior is trying to tell us. I need control, I need attention, I need predictability, and I need comfort or safety. Take a minute to think about our kids' typical routine pre-COVID-19. They woke up in the morning, they got dressed, they had some breakfast, they got on the bus or got in the car, went to school. They were in school all day. I know for myself, I have one who difficult at home, but man, he would get to school, and my 7-year-old at school was a delight to have in class, apparently. Always confused me, but he was a delight to have in class. Well, why? It's predictable. The expectations are clear. Everyone is moving along in the same direction. They know exactly what to do, when to say it, how to do it, where things go. It's all very clear. And the people in positions of authority or control are not their parents. So there's an element of emotional connection that is removed that makes a big difference. When they are in school and in their typical routine, they have a lot of these things for the most part. There's always days, there's always times, but for the most part, their routine is very predictable. They have a certain amount of control within that routine. They know where they're allowed to have control and where they're not. They're getting attention from their peers, they're getting attention from their teachers, they're getting attention from, older kids, younger kids, other parents that pick up time. That need is being filled. Then they're coming home and they're getting attention from you because you haven't seen them all day and you're excited to see them and hear about their day. And that need for attention is filled. And the need for comfort and safety is filled because when our life is predictable, we feel like we have control and we're getting an appropriate amount of attention that feels positive. We feel comfortable and safe. All of these things right now are not happening. They don't know when they're going to go back to school. They don't know when they're going to get back to sports. They don't know when they're going to see their friends. They don't know any of this. It's completely unpredictable. And there's no way of giving them any sort of answer that changes that. So when we see these behaviors in our kids right now, going through that list of questions to figure out ultimately, what are they trying to tell me right now? What do they need more of? What are we not doing in our day-to-day routine right now that they need more? In the immediate situation, in the moment, we need to respond to these behaviors with as much empathy as we can muster in ourselves after a long day of responding to behaviors. So this is kind of my shorthand that I like to use for the in-the-moment response. The first thing we need to do is help our kids regulate and get calm, because until they are calm and regulated, they cannot identify the problem. They cannot tell you what they're feeling or why they're feeling that way or how we got here. They can't give you those answers because until they are calm, their emotional response is driving the bus. And emotions can't make decisions. Logic makes decisions. I talk to kids sometimes about, they all have iPads or some sort of device, and they all seem to understand the idea that if you don't plug your device in, the battery dies. And if the battery dies, you can't access the information on that device. That's our frontal lobe. That's our kid's frontal lobe. It's their device. And when emotion is driving the situation, their frontal lobe has lost all battery and they cannot access the information there. So until we have that back in functioning, we really can't figure out why anything happened, what happened, what is really even actually going on. And our kids can't make better decisions in that moment either. So step one is to really help our kids regulate. The younger our kids, the more support they need in co-regulating. So co-regulation basically means you're stepping in and saying, okay, we're doing this together. Let's take some deep breaths because this isn't working. And you're taking breaths with them and having them copy you and modeling for them what it is you want them to do in order to bring their energy and their level of emotion down. They're going to try and jump in and tell you what their sibling did or why they got angry or what wasn't working or why they're not doing this math problem. And your role is going to be to say, in a minute, first we need to settle down. Let's take some breaths and to bring it back into the calming. Now, some other ideas here. Some kids like to do deep breaths with mom and dad. Some kids like sensory tools, a weighted blanket or a weighted vest, or weighted something on their lap, or just a heavy blanket or a tight blanket wrap, something to play with in their hands. Some kids, in order to calm down, do need a little bit of space. Especially as they get older, my older son will say, "Just need a minute. Can you just give me a minute?" Okay. So as they get to the older stages of elementary school, they can start to give you a little bit more information about what it is they need. But with the little, particularly kindergarten, first grade, second grade, you're really going to have to work with them to figure out what is it that we can do right now to settle down before we even get into what the issue is, because you're getting nowhere in regards to that issue if the frontal lobe is not charged up. Once your child has a level of calm, my favorite way of figuring this out, there's a sigh, right? When our kids are really settled enough and their frontal lobe is back in action and we're able to have a conversation with them, there's a sigh. And it's pretty consistent. So they'll be yelling and screaming and whatever they're doing, and you're working with them to take some breaths and put their blankets on and do whatever it is that they've worked with you on to calm down. And then all of a sudden you'll hear, and that's the point where they're calm and their frontal lobe is reconnected. Then you move on to step 2 and you do the connection piece. Wow. It seems like you're having a really hard time right now. It must be hard to feel that way. And you're empathizing and validating, identifying what emotion you're noticing in them and letting them know it's okay for them to have those feelings. This is where you might get a hug, you might put your hands on their shoulder, they might want to hold your hand. With the real little ones, they might sit in your lap. You're reconnecting and letting them know that even though they just had this big feeling, you're still right there with them and you're going to help them through it. And then once you get through that piece, then you start to talk about what the heck just happened. What happened? Why did it happen? And what can we do differently next time? Those 3 questions are the debriefing part of managing an in-the-moment situation. What just happened there? Why did it happen? And what can we do different next time? That last piece is coping ahead of time so that the next time a similar trigger happens, their frontal lobe can remember that they have a plan for this. If you've done it ahead of time, and if you've done it when their frontal lobe is plugged in. That's why it's so important to wait for the correction until they are calm and to talk about what to do and different ways to handle that situation when they are calm. Because if you're having those conversations before step 1, when their frontal lobe is not connected, they will not remember at the next time that happens, because their brain wasn't working. They were in fight or flight. They were in survival mode, and they weren't taking in that information. So first, calm down with your child. Co-regulate, because quite honestly, you probably may need to regulate in that moment too. Get everybody down a notch. Connect, empathize, validate, and then figure out how to manage the situation more appropriately and more safely, more in a more contained way in the future when that trigger arises. What strategies we use to help our kids in these moments are really going to depend, again, on what need we've determined that behavior is needed. A lot of these strategies kind of work together, and ultimately what I like to think about is when we're planning out our day, when we're planning out our week, if we try to incorporate these needs into our routine, then we tend to see less behavior because we're proactively addressing the things that we know our kids need. We know our kids need control, predictability, attention, and comfort and safety. So we build that in to what we're already doing anyway. And by building that in, we reduce the level of stress and we bring the baseline down in terms of frustration tolerance and ability to control the amount of emotion that they're feeling. So, I'm going to start with predictability. I think this is where creating a routine starts, right? Like I said, School is very predictable, it's very clear, the expectations are laid out, they know what they're supposed to do. Home is their comfort zone, their space. And so even when we're giving them a remote learning schedule that their teacher created for them, they're still home. And that's hard for them to connect. So we've got to provide them with some level of predictability and some level of routine. It is not going to be the same level of predictability and routine that they get at school. It will never be that level of structure and routine because we're not a school, we're a home, and we have other things going on, and we're parents, and we're trying to work, and we have our own needs and our own expectations that we're trying to meet on top of what we're trying to help our kids do for, to meet their expectations. So creating a routine is important because it does provide predictability for our kids. That being said, it doesn't have to be set in stone, and it doesn't have to be meticulous, and it doesn't have to be minute by minute. It's going to be the best we can do and whatever works best for our family at any given time. So lots of people, I think, are trying to wake up in the morning and do school right away to get it out of the way. And morning meetings and Zoom calls are at different times, and it all tends to be in the first part of the day. There are going to be some kids that aren't going to get up right away and sit on a computer and start doing schoolwork, and that's okay. There might be a Zoom call they need to do with their class or something like that, but if they want to go outside first, if they have a call and after their call they go outside and they're going to play for a while, and then they're going to come in and they're going to have lunch, and then after lunch they're going to do their work. If that works for your family, that's great. It doesn't matter where things go. It just matters that they know for our house and our family at this time, this is how things run. I like to make schedules visual. I think kids being able to see what's coming and being able to independently go to a whiteboard or a schedule of whatever creation and visually see, this is where I'm doing schoolwork, this is where I'm playing outside, this is where I'm having lunch. It helps them in these times of unpredictability because they don't have to think about when these things are going to happen. They just go look at the board and they're like, okay, I got it. This is where things go, right? That being said, I'm going to jump a little bit into control and just say that while routine is important, it's also important to give them a little bit of control and say in building that routine because they don't have control of so much right now. It doesn't mean they get to decide everything, but it does mean if you wake up, for example, this morning, we woke up and it was really sunny and nice out, and I knew that it was going to rain this afternoon. Now, typically in our house, we do school first thing in the morning, and we were having breakfast, and I said, what do you think, guys? Sunny now, it's going to rain later. How do we want to handle this? And they said, well, can we go outside now in case we can't get out there later? I said, sure. You'll have to do your work after lunch. And that was agreed on. So it was a change in the schedule, but it was an agreed upon change in the schedule that came from them that had their buy-in, so it worked. It gave them that sense of, I can look to see what my need is, and I can have that need met. I need to move my body today at some point. This is the opportunity that I have. So within reason, that switch makes sense. So it's important to have predictability, but it's also important to give them a little bit of control and choice where you can in terms of what the day is going to look like. Develop traditions and rituals. So we have a lot of these, but we also, typically, but we also can't do a lot of the traditions and rituals that we have. Right now it's spring, it's baseball season. We're supposed to be at the baseball field eating chicken fingers from the snack shack on Saturday nights and Friday nights and Saturday nights. That's our tradition. Has been for the last few years. We're not doing that right now. So we have to come up with something else. What are we going to do during this time at home to make it kind of fun, to make it kind of interesting without having to put a whole lot of work and effort into it because we don't have the energy for a whole lot of effort. They don't have to be huge things, but small things. Movie nights on Tuesday night, pizza nights on Friday night. After lunch, we go for a walk. whatever it may be. But what routines and traditions do, or excuse me, what traditions and rituals do is they root our routine. They kind of, they ground our routines, they give them some roots, and they give kids points in the day that they can really count on and look forward to. And within the week as well. So, you know, coming up with ways to help them know, like, okay, every Wednesday night we're getting this family game night going, and we're going to have this hour all together to play this game. And then they have something to look forward to, because they don't have anything to look forward to right now either. So it gives them that sense of excitement and that sense of normalcy in that way. The other piece about predictability is consistent responses to their behaviors. So I'm going to sort of straddle predictability and comfort and safety here and say that as much as possible, we want to have a consistent response to our kids' behaviors. We're also human, and sometimes we're going to lose our cool and we're going to handle things in ways we wish we hadn't. And that is okay. The other side of that is just going back and acknowledging and apologizing. Hey, you know what? I lost it. I'm sorry. That was not okay. I did not handle that well. I really should have done this instead. And you're modeling for them how to process after a situation where you've let your emotions take over and you've let your big emotions come out in a scary way. So we want to, you know, balance that consistent response with apologies and debriefing and modeling with our kids when we're unable to maintain that level of predictability. Going back up to control, so we want to give kids a little bit of control around their routine and their schedule to the degree that works within your structure. Involvement in planning, being flexible when you can be. The other piece that's really important in terms of control is helping kids to learn how to control their thoughts and their thinking. And so for this piece, I always encourage families to explore all the different apps that are out there for that teach meditation for kids. There's some really, really good ones with a lot of free content. One of my favorites is called Smiling Mind. It breaks meditation scripts down by age, and there's an entire category of sleep meditations for kids. And there's a 7 to 9-year-old category that I've been doing with my kids since my youngest is like 3. So it's really 9 and under, and then, you know, a 10 to 12 or 13. And so it groups it by age to really kind of make sure that developmentally what they're hearing makes sense to them and they can connect with it. And this is a really important tool right now where everything feels so out of control. The only thing they really have control over, really 100%, is their thoughts and their thinking in their brain. And so, but they have to choose that. They have to choose to have that control. So by teaching them these meditation skills, we're giving them a little bit of a sense of how to control that, how to use your breathing and positive self-talk to slow down your thoughts, to step back, to regain your control, and to think before you actually can respond to a situation instead of reacting to a situation. I do this at bedtime. I find it the easiest time to get my kids to take that moment to slow down. We do all our bedtime, the water and the everything, all of it. We get into bed, we pull the covers up, and these scripts are like 5 or 6 minutes. And right now my kids have 2 that they love. They each pick one. And we listen to those for about 10 minutes. And by the end of the 10 minutes, they are out cold. And then during the day, if I see them starting to speed up, if I see their thinking starting to get out of control, I can refer back to that. Hey, why don't you take a breath for a minute? And, you know, maybe do you need to go listen to, we call it bubbles. You need to go listen to bubbles for a few minutes. Sometimes they will, sometimes they'll say no, but I am going to go sit on the couch and breathe for a few minutes before I start working on that assignment again. Okay, great. It gives them a skill and a strategy that they can use to help calm themselves down. Attention. So our kids are not getting a lot of our attention. It feels like they are getting a lot of our attention, but they're not getting the kind of attention that they're used to or that they want. They want one-on-one, undivided attention. I had a conversation with my kids around this recently. I'm working from home and seeing clients and fielding emails, text messages, phone calls, all of this, and trying to help them with their schoolwork. And while my 10-year-old, 5th grade, a little bit more independent, understands the computer systems, can kind of roll with it, my 7-year-old needs a little bit more help. And I was trying to help him, and I was also doing a couple other things, and he just finally was like, can you just stop and help me? Can you put that away? And I realized that my attention was so split that I wasn't really fully able to help him with what it was. I wasn't even understanding what he was asking me for help with. Our kids are really pulling for our attention, and if we give them 20 minutes of undivided positive attention, it saves us a ton on the other side. If we plan it, if they know it's coming, they can sometimes hold and tolerate more because they know that they're going to get that need met eventually. If it's unpredictable and they don't know when they're going to get their need met, and that's just another unpredictable factor in their life, they're going to act in a way that gets that need met, which isn't necessarily going to be positive. It's going to be something that gets our attention and holds our attention. And if you think about how long you are with your kids when they're having a difficult time, it's probably longer than the 20 minutes that you could plan ahead of time. So planning that one-on-one time, engaging in activities that are their preferred activities, a game that they choose, something that they love to do, really fills their cup, and allows for more compliance and more cooperative behavior moving forward from that spot. And supporting the completion of difficult academic tasks. We break our tasks up, and they know what they can do when I can't help them, and they know when I'm able to help them, and they wait and bring me the hard things, essentially, that they can't do without me. They know what time blocks during the day they're gonna be able to get that help. We want to kind of think about how we can give them that attention and that support before they come looking for it in a negative way. A couple more notes on comfort and safety. I feel like attention, control, and predictability can all kind of be addressed proactively within our routine and our structures during the day. Comfort and safety is interesting because it comes up at different times. Kids all of a sudden asking hard questions about what's going on right now. Talking about your feelings and how all of this is affecting them, how all of this is affecting you. Giving them answers. One of the things about answering hard questions that's really important is that if they have these questions and we don't answer them, they will make up their own answers. And their own answers are usually worse and more scary than the answers that we give them. So we really want to find an age-appropriate way to talk to them about what's going on. I have some resources at the end. NPR and Brain Pop Jr. and PBS all have some really great materials on how to talk to kids, social stories and comic strips on how to talk to kids about COVID-19. Finding those resources, they're there, and using them with our kids when they have big questions about what's going on is going to be really important in helping ease their fears. Sometimes I think we are afraid that if we give them information and we talk to them too much about what all of this is, that it might make them more fearful. Unfortunately, like I said, the reality is they make up their own answers, and they're usually worse than the ones that we can give them. So we want to provide them with accurate information that helps them understand what's happening. So this is kind of an overview of the needs and strategies and things that we can do to fill these cups before they have to tell us with their behavior that we're not, that they need more in these areas. In order to do all that, we have to take care of ourselves. And I want to make a very clear point here. I called this slide essential self-care because this is not luxury self-care. This is not having a spa day and all the fun things that we love to do that we can't do anyway right now. This is essential self-care. This is remembering to go to bed and get enough sleep, and to get up in the morning and take a shower, and to go outside during the day and to move your body around and to eat meals. And, this is taking care of you and making sure that your brain is functioning properly so that you can help your kids with their problem solving and decision making. If your frontal lobe isn't working and their frontal lobe isn't working, it's a recipe for explosion. And this is how we make sure that our frontal lobes are connected. We take care of ourselves, you know, and it doesn't have to be hours and hours and hours of self-care. You know, getting fresh air and exercise could be going outside with the kids all at the same time, and we're doing all of that together as one, and it's checking off all kinds of boxes, right? Fresh air, even on days that haven't been great weather-wise, if things are getting tough inside, just stepping out on the back porch or just out the front door for 5 minutes just to breathe some fresh air and to have a little space can make the rest of the afternoon go much more smoothly. So you want to make sure that as you're going through your day and worrying about your kids and worrying about what they're doing and keeping the house going and doing your job, that you're also taking care of yourself. And then the last bullet point here is grace and forgiveness, because sometimes it's not going to happen and you're going to lose it, and that's okay too. And when you have a bad day, or when you wake up and it's just not happening and you throw in the towel and let the kids watch movies all day, you gotta let that be okay too, because this is an unprecedented situation that none of us are prepared for, and some days are going to be better than others. So we're at the final slide here, and a couple of takeaways that I hope make sense in the context of all of this. Pandemic parenting exists in survival mode. This is not, there's no award here for like the best pandemic parent. We are in survival mode. This is about keeping our kids happy, healthy, and safe, and getting through the day in what feels like a calm manner more often than not. Our kids' behavior is their way of communicating with us when their needs and emotions aren't being met and their emotions aren't being heard. So when we're seeing a lot of behavior, when we're noticing patterns, we want to step back and think about what that behavior is telling us. What do they need right now? Building a routine is a proactive way to meet their needs, and having some flexibility with that routine is an in-the-moment strategy to meet those needs. And essential self-care is about our survival. It's not luxury. It's about having something to give when they need us. We're doing the best we can, and that is enough at the end of the day. A few resources that I talked about, the meditation app Smiling Minds is the one that I love. There's a million out there, and they're all pretty good. This one just happens to have a ton of free content that's age appropriate, so I love this one. Go Zen is a great website and Facebook page with resources around childhood anxiety. There's some free stuff, there's some paid content, but it's great. It's a good one to explore and see if it might meet any of your needs if you have kids who are particularly anxious. And NPR, PBS, and Brain Pop all have great content explaining COVID-19 to elementary school age kids. Social stories, videos, NPR has a comic strip, so really trying to hit on all kinds of different interests and needs with different kids. My Facebook page is Julie D. Cullen, LACSW@M. You can find me there. I post lots of stuff about anxiety and behavior and parenting and how to kind of manage the burnout feelings of all of this. And you can message me there if you have any other questions, or you can email me. My email address is up here. And now with that, I'd like to open it up to all of you for any questions that you guys might have.
I'm on mute. Julia, just thank you so much. This was incredible. And I hope everybody who was on found it useful. Like Julie just said, we would love to take any questions that you have. So if you want to type in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, please feel free to do that. And if you don't know how to unmute yourself, just type in the chat that you want to ask it via the phone. And I also have the ability to unmute folks, so you can do that.
I did see that there was a question about Smiling Minds. Their scripts are about 5 to 6 minutes long, and They teach things like progressive muscle relaxation, diaphragmatic breathing, really important concepts, but they bring it down to an age appropriate level. So for the 7 to 9 year olds, it's called the bubble journey, and they talk about breathing in a bubble and feeling that bubble every time you breathe in and you breathe out. You feel that bubble in a different part of your body, in a different set of muscles, and your muscles feel warm and your muscles feel relaxed, and helping kids to really zone in on those different parts of their body to relax their muscles and calm them. And then they have another one my kids love called Wish Tree, which is a guided meditation. And it's a guided imagery meditation, and it's all about making a wish. You're sitting by a tree, and there's all these birds, and you make a wish on a bird, and the bird flies away and holds your wish for you until you need it. And they just really like that idea at bedtime of giving the bird this worry or this wish, so that the bird can take it away so that they can sleep better. So and then like I said, a newer segment is all sleep meditation for kids, and there's like 5 or 6 different scripts, and so we've just listened to a bunch of different ones, and they have found the ones that are their favorites, and they ask for those particular ones at night. And we've been doing this for probably 6 years, almost every single night, and if we forget, they ask us for it.
Julie, do you see that question? Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is struggling with preference for one parent. I suspect it's about control. I'm not sure how to address it. So that is about control. It's probably a little bit about safety and comfort. And so I think the way that I've addressed this with kids and parents, just in general, when kids are preferring one parent, because this is something that happens developmentally too, at different times as kids are growing up. Little snippets of time with the other parent doing preferred activities, building that connection and building that relationship, so that they start to have those associations with that other parent as well. So playing a game of cards one night, or watching a video that the kid really, really likes, and having the child show that other parent the video and watching it together, and having that parent really attune to the child and really like zone in and be excited about what this kid is showing them. Working bigger and bigger chunks of time during unstressful moments, with the goal of building that relationship, building that sense of comfort and that sense of safety, and in a way that the child feels like there's control. If you start to say, I'm not coming, mom's coming, or I'm not coming, dad's coming, whichever direction, and forcing the other parent, then it becomes a game of control. Then the heels dig in, and then it gets difficult. But if you're sort of offering short periods of time for relationship building and connecting, then that will help should help shift that dynamic over time. It's not a quick fix, but it should help shift that dynamic so that both parents can be seen as comforting and safe.
Great. Thank you so much. Teresa had a question. She's wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what is quote unquote normal or common to expect in terms of a child's behavior during this situation versus what type of behaviors or emotions should prompt further support, like reaching out to a counselor.
So I think the variety of behaviors that would be normal right now is pretty wide. I think we're seeing a lot of kids engaging in behavior that is oppositional, that's pretty defiant, that's regressions from things that they'd already mastered. And I think a lot of that is normal in this context. I think the place where you start to think about whether or not you need more support would really center around what other ways can you figure out what the need is, and if there's no other way to meet the need, if you've engaged them and worked with them and tried to problem solve with them and things aren't changing, then sometimes having that support, another voice, another person to come in and help your child brainstorm and problem solve can really be helpful in getting them unstuck. I think a lot of it right now comes down to, is it really affecting the functioning of the home in general? Because we can't go anywhere. We all have to be in the same space. So if somebody's behavior is affecting the dynamic as a whole, and there's been no successful ability to collaborate and create better ways to manage, then having that extra layer of support can really be helpful in getting things unstuck. But a lot of behavior right now is going to be normal because our kids have such a low frustration tolerance and are so thrown out of whack right
now. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? These were both great questions, and thank you so much, Julie, for the thoughtful answers. I feel like it's always so awkward waiting for questions on a virtual meeting because I can't see if people are raising their hands or if they're typing, or so I don't want to end it prematurely, but Michelle has to get a 6-year-old to bed. Very good. I feel like Smiling Minds is probably beneficial for adults too, not just.
It has adult scripts as well.
Oh, it does. Excellent.
It goes all the way up to adults. It has extended. I'm not great at long meditations, but it has like 10, 15, 20-minute ones as well.
Great.
It goes all the way out, and it's all free, which is part of why I love it.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's quality stuff.
Ooh, that's a good question from Andrea. Should I be worried about my only child not interacting with other children in person for such a long time?
So this is a tough one. I think that we have to be creative about our social connections right now. So I would say that no, if your child is reaching out to friends through video chats, Facebook Messenger, Google Meets, whatever, Zoom, whatever modalities you use in your home, then I don't think it's something to be worried about at this point, because nobody is interacting in person. So it's not a situation where your child is doing something different from what everybody else is doing, and therefore we'll have to kind of catch up and figure it out when he gets back. In this situation, all of our kids are pulled away from in-person contact. So all of our kids are only communicating virtually. And like all of our kids are going to, when they're back in person, are going to have a minute where they have to figure that out again. But I would say that as long, I wouldn't worry about it in terms of the in-person piece, because he's not alone. He's not the only one. Yes, other kids, if the kids have siblings, but sibling relationships are different from peer relationships anyway. I certainly hope my kids don't act around their friends the way they act around each other. So it's just a different type of relationship, and I don't necessarily think it puts them in any better situation once everybody's back together with their peers. They're all missing that right now. They're all struggling with that, and they're all communicating virtually. So I think everyone will be in the same boat. I would encourage him to reach out virtually. I would encourage, any sort of, writing letters or texting, or, we did a thing, my kids made art projects and we drop them off at friends' houses, different ways of communicating that way. Then friends have returned the favor and dropped little things off at our house. So that's a kind of a fun way to keep that social connection without being able to be in person. But they're all in the same boat. So it's different than a situation where one child is just isolating, but everybody else is continuing to learn those skills.
Great. Thank you so much. And another great question. Are there any last comments or thoughts before we wrap up for the evening? Give it a few seconds, make sure. Sibling relationships, any tips for navigating that dynamic during this fun time?
It's so hard. So they're difficult right now. They're around each other 24/7, and they're the only other kids they have. So it's bound to end up explosive at times. I think that the thing that I've found most helpful is to try actually to give them a point during the day where they have some space from each other. If they're starting to be a little too much on top of each other, a little too much wrestling, and I have 2 boys, so it is just constantly, there's constant wrestling, constant jumping, constant yelling. And when it's getting to be a little too much, we take a break and we go in separate rooms and we just take 15 minutes to settle it down, and then we try again. It's hard because at this point, after 8 weeks of being with the same people nonstop, everybody's little habits that sometimes are irritating are really getting on each other's nerves. So I think giving them space from each other, giving them breaks from each other, and also finding ways to give them tasks where they're working together, kind of against you in a sense. So we've done some things where we've done some video games, mom and dad versus the kids. So they're having to work on a team and having to work together. Those are short-lived. They are quick, and then we let them have some success and feel like they're working together and cooperative, and then we move on to something else before it turns into a battle. But there are lots of battles right now, and a lot of it just has to do with being around the same people nonstop, and the small things that can be overlooked normally getting under each other's skin. Can have conversations with them about it, like, just like you don't like when he does this, he doesn't like when you do that, and try and make those connections and those comparisons. But a lot of it is just the ups and downs of being kind of stuck with the same people. We love them, and they drive us crazy. So I think I would say give them some space. Other times, get them working together. Give them a common goal, and then when you have to call it. Don't let it get. If it starts to get up there, just call it before it gets too high, because it's not going to turn around until there's a break.
Great advice again. Thank you for the great question and the thoughtful response. Yes, Rebecca, this video will be posted. It should be up on the Impact Norwood website by tomorrow evening. We have a special category under our resources page called event recordings. So this video will be there. Any other questions? You're welcome, Rebecca. Glad you found this helpful. Excellent. Very good. All right. Any last thoughts, Julie, before we wrap up?
It is not easy. It is not easy. And I think I would leave you all just with the idea that we're all doing the best we can, and we're all surviving and getting through. And the fact that you're here and you're trying and you're trying to come up with new ideas and new ways to manage this is enough. Putting in that effort is going to be enough on the other side. And the goal of all of this is to help our kids get through it and to help ourselves get through it. So, and please feel free, like I said, my email's up here, my Facebook page. If you have any questions, send me a note. I'm happy to set up a time to meet if it would be helpful, and good luck.
And just to repeat the site where the recording will be available, it's on the Impact Norwood website. So the same place where you probably got the link to register, impactnorwood.org. And then it's under the resources page. So it should be up there. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Thank you to everybody who joined. And Julie, thank you again so much for doing this. It was really fantastic. And I actually learned a lot. I don't have children, but I think, I can still take a lot from this. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. All right, everybody. I hope everyone has a great week, and hopefully we'll see each other in person soon. Take care.